I was never supposed to find that walkie-talkie. Hi, I'm here with a scary story. And this is one of those stories that's been bouncing around my brain for years. First, the school would let out 2 hours early, because we had no classes after lunch. Second, all of our teachers would leave as soon as lunch ended, meaning the school was essentially abandoned for the afternoon. And third, most students would take the bus home immediately after school, rather than staying for after-school activities. I don't even know where it originated from. So if you've heard something similar, please let me know down below in the comments. I tried not to think about it, telling myself it was probably just a mouse or a bird. But curiosity got the better of me, and I slipped between the bars of the fence to investigate. I jumped, dropping the walkie-talkie onto the floor. Who's there? What? How was the voice? Mr. Williams, I thought. But he was already gone. I knew this had to be some kind of joke. A group of senior boys liked to play pranks on us lower-classmen. But this one was beyond unfunny. Whoever was on the other end of that walkie-talkie was messing with me, but tripped over my own feet instead, sending pain lancing up my ankle. I cried, cradling my leg. That's when I heard him. I was about to toss it aside when I remembered something. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my ankle throbbed. I struggled to catch my breath, my whole body shaking with adrenaline. It took several minutes before I could finally speak, ignoring the throbbing pain in my ankle. I pushed myself off the floor and limped toward the door. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel his eyes boring into my back. It was the Friday before spring break, which meant 3 things. She listened patiently to my story, her brow furrowed with concern. I huddled under my covers, clutching my stuffed animal, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined the tall, dark figure reaching for me, his cold fingers brushing against my skin. When I finished, she pulled me into a tight, her voice soft and soothing. I strained to listen, and I swear I heard a voice say my name. It has to be. I waited, listening intently, but the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Ben, I heard it, a knock. At first I thought it was the wind, but then it happened again. A slow, deliberate knock on my bedroom wall. I told my friends about the closet, but they just laughed and called it a silly story that hurt the most. It was the exact same model as the one from school. In a panic, I reached for the radio, flipping the switch to the on position. She helped me clean my wounds, and even made me my favorite meal, spaghetti and meatballs. It was the perfect remedy for a bad day. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see the tall, shadowy figure from the closet at any moment. I was watching TV when the lights flickered and died. Immediately, my thoughts went back to the closet. Could it be? I felt a chill crawl up my spine. But when I finally reached my house, breathless and shaken, I realized I was safe. It looked brand new, and I couldn't imagine what Mr. Williams would be doing with a walkie-talkie at school. Especially since he never stayed late. For the rest of the evening, I kept hearing strange noises that sounded like footsteps in the attic or whispers in the living room. Every time the phone rang or the doorbell rang, I jumped, expecting to see that same tall, shadowy figure standing in our doorway. I told him everything. The darkness, the closet, the walkie-talkie. But when I described the man's voice, he just shook his head and dismissed my story with a wave of his hand. He said something about a troubled home life and recommended I spend the weekend with my parents. Only silence answered me. Maybe it was just a recording, I thought, trying to convince myself. B didn't believe me either. But the next voice that crackled through the speaker sent chills down my spine. I crouched down and picked it up, turning it over in my hands. On the side I found a tiny switch. It was labeled Janitor's Closet. To my surprise, the label beneath it read Supply Closet. This wasn't the janitor's closet. It was the supply closet, a room no one ever used. Was he watching me? Following me? How did he know I was there? I dropped the walkie-talkie and scrambled backwards, hitting the wall. I wanted to scream, but terror froze my voice. Breathe in heavily. I backed away from the closet door, because it was filled to the brim with old desks, chairs, boxes, anything the school couldn't find a proper place for. But how did they get in here? Proofs. Unless someone had broken a window, I couldn't think of a single way anyone could have gotten inside and set up a prank. Flipping it to the on position, I pressed the button down. That day, I had a late dentist appointment, so I stayed behind in the art room working on a sculpture until about 2 p.m. when suddenly the lights flickered and died, plunging us into total darkness. It wasn't unusual for the art room to be without power, so I just grabbed my flashlight and went looking for Miz. My dad wasn't any better. So I decided to just walk home along the familiar railroad tracks that bordered our school property. Clayton, who had the keys to the old circuit breaker box. I saw a sliver of light coming through the rusted bars. I stopped and stared. Because the gates were supposed to be locked on the other side. I cautiously walked over and peered through the fence. The light was coming from inside the janitor's closet. I listened at first, hearing nothing except for the usual creaking of the old building. Then I heard it again, a soft click, like the sound of someone flipping a switch. The hair on my arms instantly stood on end. Something wasn't right. But when I found her in the hallway, she told me she didn't have the keys and just suggested I go home since the power was clearly out and there was no way. They were going to fix it before 3 p.m. I considered calling my mum to pick me up, but I knew she'd be at work and I didn't want to interrupt her day. As I approached the big iron gates that marked the entrance to the track, the janitor, Mr. Williams, was supposed to lock up and leave when the power went out. It was then I saw it, a small walkie-talkie sitting on the floor, its flashing red light illuminating the dusty room. Crackle, static filled my ears. Then a voice. "Hello, anyone there?" When I entered the closet, I'd noticed a switch on the far wall. Feeling foolish, I turned the walkie-talkie back on. "Hello, is anyone there?" I called out into the darkness. I hear you breathing. You can't hide from me. Oh my God. Then I heard footsteps. Someone was walking toward me in the dark. I spun around, intending to run for the door. I know which room you're in. His voice was just inches from my ear. Panic surged through me. I had to get away. When I finally reached the door and stumbled outside, I didn't stop running until I was 2 blocks away from the school, at least for now. I quickly unlocked the door and rushed inside. I called my mom into the kitchen and told her what had happened. And yet, even as I ate, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. My parents tried to cheer me up, telling me it was just my imagination, but I knew they were just saying that. The next morning I went straight to the principal's office, but my parents didn't believe me either. By that night I heard scratching sounds in the walls in the closet, like someone was trying to get out. Then I started hearing whispers. No, not in my head. They were coming from the walls. I spent the next few days jumpy and on edge. A week later, during spring break, I was visiting my father for the weekend when it happened again. I was home alone. Mum and Dad were out shopping. No, it was just a power outage, I told myself. That's when I found the walkie-talkie in my closet. Its flashing red light illuminated the terrified expression on my face. Static filled my ears, then a voice. Hello, anyone there? Hello, friends. I am here. And this is another episode of our channel where we share scary stories. That could be true. Before we begin, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button if you want more videos like this one. And now let us begin. I was working as a security guard at a school at night. It was just another ordinary night. Nothing out of the ordinary, until suddenly the alarm went off. It meant that someone had entered the building and triggered one of the motion sensors. He appeared on the next camera and was still moving on all fours. This was weird. I mean, why would someone crawl on the floor? Maybe I could find some clues as to what was going on. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in danger, that whatever this guy was up to, he was dangerous. I decided to go check out the security footage to see if I could get a better idea of what was going on. Over and over, people crawling around on the floor, hiding in the shadows. They were laughing and talking, and it seemed like they were just hanging out. The students were everywhere, but they were never in the same place twice. It was like there were ghosts haunting the hallway. I felt a growing sense of dread in my stomach. What was going on here? Why were the students acting so strangely? And what had happened to them? But then they stopped. They turned to look at the camera, and I saw a flash of panic in their eye. They looked terrified, and then they were gone. It was like something out of a nightmare. I felt a chill go down my spine, and I couldn't help but wonder, was I in danger? Were these people out to get me? Prot, if you did, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to hear more scary stories like this one. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. It was written on the chalkboard in one of the classrooms. The writing was in chalk, and it read, "They're here to take us home." I felt a chill go down my spine. What did it mean? Was the school in danger? Was everyone I knew in danger? Maybe there was something in the footage that I'd missed. I turned around and saw the students standing in the doorway. They were pale, and their eyes were wide with terror. They looked at me and whispered, "Run." Then they were gone. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I had to get out of the school. I grabbed my flashlight and my gun and headed out the door. I scanned the area, but everything seemed to be in order. The footage from the last camera showed the students entering the principal's office. I knew I had to go see what was going on. I raced up the stairs to the principal's office and burst through the door. But the room was empty. The only sign of life was a chair that was overturned in the corner. I knew I had to find the students, but where would I find them? There was no sign of forced entry, and nothing looked out of place. The halls were empty. The classrooms were deserted. It was like the entire school had been abandoned. I felt a cold dread settle over me. What had happened to the students? Over me. Had they been taken, kidnapped? Were they in danger? Just as I was about to head back inside, I noticed something. There was a pair of footprints in the wet cement outside the door. I crouched down and took a closer look. The prints were made by someone who was clearly in a hurry. They were running away. So I started checking the other cameras to see if I could spot him on them. That S, when I saw him on the camera in the chemistry lab down the hall from the biology lab. He was just disappearing from sight. I quickly switched to the camera in the hallway outside the chemistry lab, but he was nowhere to be seen. Maybe he'd found an exit, or he'd climbed over one of the fences outside. I checked the monitors and saw a group of students who had stayed after class to work on some project. What was going on? Who was this guy, and what was he doing? I tried to tell myself it was no big deal, that it was probably just some kid who was high on drugs or something. I couldn't help but feel like there was something more sinister going on here. They were hanging out in the biology lab. As soon as I realized it was them, I stopped paying attention to them. Students often stayed late in the labs to study or hang out. Sometimes they forgot to leave through the front door and set off the alarm. I knew they'd left the building when the motion sensor stopped picking up their movements. As I watched the footage, I saw the guy crawling on the floor. But there was something else there. In the background, I could make out the faint outlines of other people. They were standing in the corners of the room, watching him. I couldn't believe it. Was this guy part of some kind of cult? Were these other people part of it too? A few minutes later, the same motion sensor was triggered again. There shouldn't have been anyone left in the building. Each room has a camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. There was a camera in the hallway outside the biology lab where the strange movement had been spotted. I switched to that camera and saw the same thing. A guy was crawling on all fours. It looked like he was trying to sneak past the camera. It was creepy. He was moving like a spider, slowly and deliberately. I tried to convince myself it was just some weirdo who'd gotten into the school and was probably trying to steal something, but I couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong. At first, I thought maybe those kids had come back for something they'd forgotten. But no, there was no one in the hall. On the monitor, I could see the outline of a person crawling along the floor. At first, I thought it was some kind of bug, but then I realized it wasn't moving like a bug. It was definitely a person. I decided to check the hallway cameras to see what was going on. He crawled past the camera and disappeared around the corner. Then I saw him again. As I watched the screen, my heart started beating faster, and my palms got sweaty. I decided to go check out the hallway outside the chemistry lab. So, who was this guy? What was he doing in the building? And why did he leave so suddenly? As I scrolled through the footage, I came across something that made my blood run cold. It was the footage from the camera in the chemistry lab. As I watched the rest of the footage, I saw the same thing. As I watched the footage, I saw the group of students enter the room. I checked the footage from the other cameras, but it was all the same. Then I saw it. As I searched the school, I called out their names, but there was no answer. As I searched the school, I found the answer to my question. As I stood there reading the message, I heard footsteps behind me. As I ran through the halls, I could hear the students screaming in the distance. Then, everything went black. That's all for tonight, friends. We hope you enjoyed this scary story. I had my phone pressed against my chest trying to dial 911, but it kept cutting out. And when I finally got through and told the operator I needed help, she asked me what seems to be the problem. But all I could do was scream. She hung up on me and sent police my way. Bah! They didn't find me because I wasn't there anymore. I was never there to begin with. Because the girl who was in the bathroom stall texting her mom for help wasn't me. It was someone else. Someone who would end up being the last person to ever use that bathroom. It was a Wednesday morning. I'd woken up early to get ready for school. I was gonna skip it anyway, so it didn't matter if I was caught skipping. I'd gotten away with it before, and my parents were none the wiser. So I slipped out of bed, threw on some clothes, and left. When I got outside, I saw that there were tons of cop cars surrounding my house. My breath hitched in my throat and my heart started racing. Had something happened while I was asleep? Did something happen to my family? I tried to call my dad, but his phone went straight to voicemail, so I called my mum instead. It went to voicemail. I tried again, and it went to voicemail again. Then I got a text back. It read, "Where have you been? Why haven't you answered your phone? And why are there cops here?" I responded, "I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. I'm on my way home." But when I turned around to go home, I saw how many cop cars there really were. There must have been at least 10 of them. Was this a raid? What had I missed? I tried calling my mum again, but this time her phone was on. It must have been off while I was sleeping. "Mom," I whispered, "is everything okay? What's happening?" She said, "Don't talk to her." I'm still in the car. Who just walked in? Her voice was urgent. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, "and why you sound so scared. Please tell me what's going on." Then she hung up on me. I stared at my phone in confusion. Why did she hang up on me? What was she doing? Where was she? What was she hiding from? Who was that? I heard a voice behind me say. I whirled around to see a man standing there with dark circles under his eyes and bloodshot eyes. Peas. He was tall and skinny with messy brown hair that covered his face like a curtain. P had a deep cut on his cheek that ran down his jawline and ended near his neck. I stammered. I don't know. I think we just met. I took a step back and he followed. Are you sure? He said. Because you look familiar to me. I said. Maybe we just look alike. He took another step towards me. Maybe, he said. But I've seen you before. You were at the party last night, weren't you? Party? I hadn't been to any parties last night. In fact, I'd been asleep the entire time. I didn't even know this guy, so I did what I thought was the best thing. I ran. I ran down the street, dodging cars and weaving between people. I didn't stop running until I got to the park nearby. I hid behind a tree, catching my breath. Who was that guy? Why did he think I was at some party? And what did my mum mean when she said not to talk to me? Was she in danger? Should I be helping her? Or was she in trouble? I didn't know what to do. So I pulled out my phone to call her again, but it was dead. Great. Just great. What am I going to do now? I looked around for a place to hide so that he wouldn't find me, and I noticed a bathroom nearby. Maybe I could hide in there. Yeah, I could do that. I walked over to it and unlocked the door. It was pretty old and the paint was chipping off the walls, but it was clean, which was a plus. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. Then I leaned against it, sliding down to the floor. I pulled my knees up to my chest and wrapped my arms around them. That's when I felt the floor beneath me get cold. I gasped and jolted back as a chill went down my spine. I quickly pushed that feeling aside and reached for my phone, which was still dead. I sighed. I just needed to calm down. Maybe then my phone would recharge enough for me to call my mom. But that's when I heard footsteps getting closer. I froze and stayed perfectly still. The footsteps stopped right outside the bathroom door. I dared not breathe as I listened intently to what was happening on the other side. A low voice started speaking. Hey, you in there? He said. I know you're in there. You can't hide from me forever. So you might as well come out now, or I'll break the door down. His voice echoed through the small space, vibrating the floor and sending shivers down my spine. What do? I thought frantically. I couldn't let him in. If he found me, I knew I'd be in trouble. I had to hide, but where? There had to be somewhere I could hide. My eyes darted around the bathroom, searching for an escape. Then I saw it. A small gap between the toilet and the wall. It wasn't much, but it was enough for me to fit in. Quickly, I slid between the toilet and the wall, hoping the darkness would conceal me. He started kicking at the door. Come on, open this door, he shouted. I know you're in there. Come on, please, let me in. I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart pounding in my chest. I heard the lock on the door give way, and the door swung open. A cold wind blew through the bathroom, sending goosebumps all over my body. He was inside. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't find me. I could hear him moving around, his footsteps getting closer. "Hello," he said softly, his voice inches away from me. I didn't respond. I didn't dare move. What if he saw me? What if he felt me? He stopped walking. "Who's in there?" he whispered, his voice shaky. "Please," he said. "Whoever you are, please come out. I won't hurt you. Hurt me." I thought, he's already hurt me. He's terrified me. What if he hurts me more? What if he hurts me so much I die? I started shaking uncontrollably, tears streaming down my face. I didn't want to come out. I didn't feel safe. Then I heard him walk away again. I waited, listening intently for any sound he might make. When I heard nothing, I slowly emerged from my hiding spot. Shaking and crying, I ran out of the bathroom and down the hall, not stopping until I reached the safety of my home. When I got inside, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, sliding down to the floor. I hugged my knees to my chest and cried myself to sleep. When I woke up, the first thing I did was check my phone. It was dead. Again, I threw it onto the ground. In frustration, I couldn't believe it. Was this some kind of joke? Then I heard a knock at the door. I froze, and my heart started racing. Who could that be? I cautiously made my way to the door and peered through the peephole. To my surprise, it was the police. They asked if I was okay and if I needed any help. I shook my head, still shaken by the events of the previous day. The officers were kind enough to stay for a while, asking me questions about what had happened and making sure I was safe. Eventually, they left, promising to keep me in their thoughts. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The bathroom incident continued to haunt me, leaving me with a sense of unease and dread. I couldn't understand why I had been targeted or what that mysterious man wanted from me. The authorities seemed to be no closer to finding answers, and I began to fear that I might never know what truly happened in that bathroom stall. The trauma of the experience left me shaken, questioning the safety of the world around me and wondering if I would ever find peace.